me closer to you.
Do you remember in 2018, there was a bridge that collapsed in Miami? The school was the Florida International University. And as you can see, it's a beautiful bridge. This is right when it was being created. Beautiful bridge. This would fit anywhere, even in North Scottsdale. It's just a gorgeous bridge, and it was a pedestrian bridge. And what happened in March of 2018, when they built it, this happened, and 8 people died while on it or under it. In my men's group, and by the way, every man in this room is welcome to our men's group Wednesday nights at 6 or 6:15, I don't know which, on the other side of this room. And so what happened is last week we were talking about, we're going through 1 Timothy right now, and one of the things that somebody spoke up and said, oh, remember that bridge in Florida? And I'm like, I do. I remember that happening. So I pulled it up and I remembered these images as well. And it dawned on us as in the group that sometimes we spend an awful lot of effort, energy, and resources in what our lives look like, and we spend less time on the integrity of our lives. And sometimes what happens in life is it collapses. And in the collapse, we ask the question, what happened? Well, in 1 Timothy chapter 3, if you have a Bible or if you have a digital version, either way, or we're going to put it up on the screen here in a minute, we're going to take a look at Paul's advice to Timothy about placing careful, thoughtful, intentional work in our lives that may or may not be beautiful on the outside, but lives can withstand the pressures of life. And so what Paul does in 1 Timothy chapter 3, 1 through 13, is that he provides some non-negotiables. If you're going to be in leadership in the local church, now remember, he's talking to the good people in Ephesus. If you don't know, I may have mentioned this, we certainly talked about this in our 7 churches last year, is that Ephesus, very similar to North Phoenix, maybe even North Scottsdale, but Anthem, is leaned a little bit on the affluent side, had a little bit of extra income after every month. That was Ephesus. Ephesus was at the center, just picture San Diego, and it was in the center of commerce. It was on the ocean then. Today, it's off, I don't know, a few miles. I've been there, several of you have been there, and so you actually have to drive to the Mediterranean, so the ocean has kind of rearranged itself a little bit, or the land has. But you can imagine it's similar to San Diego in that it was the hub. It was the center of a lot of good things and then a lot of not so good things that happens when you have resources and time. And so what Paul says is, if you're going to be a leader in the church, I'm going to outline for you the types of things in your life that are necessary. Now, let me just stop right here and say this. This is not a list for just those who want to be in leadership. In this case, in the text, looking at 1 Timothy 3 is that we're going to look at the qualifications of overseers or elders, and then in verse 8 we pick up on deacons. It doesn't mean that, okay, the rest of you can be drunkards. So if you're looking for a passage giving you permission or encouraging you to be a drunkard, this is not it. So just kind of keep that in mind. I know some of you are getting pretty excited. This is for everybody, but mostly, primarily, if you're going to be in some leadership, these are the things that we need to see in your life. So Paul's non-negotiables regarding leadership in the church. Number one comes from verse 1 and through 3, and that is God values character over credentials. God values character over credentials. Verse 1. The saying is trustworthy. Now let's stop here. Paul's not saying the other things that I said, chapter 1, chapter 2, they're not trustworthy, but this is. No, he's saying, I want you to take especially good, careful attention to what I'm about to tell you. This is really important that you get this right, : if anyone aspires, and I think he would also say in here, and I hope all of you do, to the office of overseer or elder or pastor, he desires a noble task. Now, what's interesting in verse 1 is he uses the word task. Now, we know what noble means. It's a position of responsibility, of authority, but also one that brings with it some, I get that. I've had more perks as a pastor than I can throw a stick at. I'm very fortunate. Judy and I have been able to meet people and do things we would never been able to do. I am not assuming that there are no perks, but what we sometimes assume is that the perks outweigh the responsibilities. And with anything, whether being a business owner or even a manager or whatever, with responsibility sometimes comes perks, but sometimes people just want the perks without the responsibility. So he says from the beginning here, if you desire to be an elder or a deacon, a pastor / elder or deacon, you have a noble desire. But nevertheless, it's work. It's hard. It's not easy. Sometimes the hardest part about being an overseer / pastor / elder, all the same position, is not saying what you are thinking. And you're thinking, well, shouldn't that be something that all of us aspire to? Should be. But sometimes you just kind of have to close your yepper. And it's hard. Not necessarily hard as in dig a hole hard, but sometimes I think digging a hole hard is easier in some ways. So he's saying to the leaders in Ephesus, if you desire this, it's hard. You might be familiar with Barna. Barna's headquarters is right here in the valley now. They have an office at Arizona Christian University, and a place that's dear to my heart and Judy's heart and Dr. Garrison's heart. And that is they do research from a Christian perspective. Pastors glean from the Barna reports quite often. And they're always working. They're always doing something to help inform the Christian community, particularly leaders, of what's happening in churches and in the world and how the church and the Christian relates to the world. And they said that the annual quitting rate for Protestant pastors, now this is 2022, so 3 years old, the average percent of Protestant pastors who leave the ministry each year for reasons other than retirement and death is much lower than you might suspect. I asked someone in my office in prayer time this morning, what do you think the percentage is? And they said 50. I said, according to Barna, it's 1%. It's interesting. And then I kept reading. And then they said, a much larger number of pastors have considered leaving. It should say, have fantasized. I don't need a Corvette. Sometimes I just want less responsibility in my midlife. 42% have considered leaving. Why? The Western church has become consumeristic. I don't even need to explain that. You get that, don't you? There's an exchange that takes place between the church and the leaders. We will give you our tithe, as if people give their tithe to me or even the church. We will do that if, in exchange, we get what we want. And what happens is, there's pressure, not just on the pastor, but on the deacon board or the elder board, is that there's pressure to be sucked into the consumeristic philosophy of the church. And you know that you're being sucked in as a pastor or an elder when you start having meetings to discuss this. How are we going to grow? The same conversation that they have at Tatum Ranch Country Club, Arrowhead Country Club, Camelback Country Club, Biltmore. No, they're not letting anyone else in. But there's country clubs that are having the same conversation. What can we do to grow and get more people and thus get more what? Say it together. 1, 2, 3. Money. Why is it in chapter 6, Paul says, do not desire money. Even for good reasons, don't desire it, because you will be tempted. He doesn't say you may be. He says you will be tempted. There's a guy named Richard Baxter. I think he's dead now. 15th century Puritan preacher. He said these words, they will study hard to preach exactly, and yet study little or not at all to live exactly. Tracking? Oh, how curiously, a little bit of sarcasm there in the 14th century. Oh, how curiously I have heard some men preach, and how carelessly I have seen them live. I just wish that Paul could give us a list of character qualities that he wants to see in leaders. Oh, it's right here. Verse 2. Husband of one wife, sober-minded, self-controlled, respectable, hospitable, able to teach, which is the one that's different than deacons. Verse 3, not a drunkard, not violent, gentle, not quarrelsome, not a lover of money. So let's just say for a minute, I walk over to Rosati's for a super high-end lunch, because I can afford it. $3 piece of pizza. It tastes like cardboard. And so I walk in across, and a truck comes and hits me, and the next couple months you decide we need another pastor. And I know what you're thinking. How could we possibly replace the most great and holy and reverend Randy? I'm thinking like you. But nevertheless, the truck has taken me out. 4 qualities that churches, search committees, and people in consumeristic churches look for. They all start with G, which makes me such a gifted communicator, which, by the way, is number 1, gifted communicator. Gregarious personality, gallant leader, and genius theologian. And when pastors begin to believe that these are the qualities that they need to have, they believe that they are unqualified. And that list, gifted communicator, gregarious personality, gallant leader, and genius theologian, are nowhere to be found in the list. It's not there. I call it the social media phenomenon. That no matter what industry you are in, more than likely, you go on social media and see someone at the top of their game in your industry and think, oh, I don't hold a candle to her or him. Mark, can you turn on the AC? I think we've got a little bit of a lapse going on, maybe. And so if you go to social media, or you go, back in the day it was TV, or you go to the conferences and you see their names, their headshots. So pastors are always funny. Now this is a guy that doesn't have a headshot, so maybe I'm just jealous. I don't know. But the list that he provides has nothing to do with his communication style or effectiveness, his personality, his leadership abilities, and being a genius theologian. And you could see how Paul drew a line and said, these are the things that are important. And so the application for this point is, you have to ask yourself, am I becoming the kind of person that God can trust? And what in my private life needs surrendering? Number two, Paul's non-negotiables regarding leaders in church. Number two is, you can't lead God's house if you take your own home for granted. He says it right here in verse 4. He must manage his own household well with all dignity, keeping his children submissive. For if someone does not know how to manage his own household, how will he care for God's church? Then jump down to verse 12. Let deacons, each of the husband and one wife, manage children in their own households well. So here's the trick. When you read this at first glance, if you were just picking up the Bible and reading this, you'd think, that's a lot of pressure on a child of a pastor. How can we put so much pressure on a PK when they're just trying to live their life at 16, 17, 18, even 23, 24, 25? And so what happens is, and I've heard of it, and if you've been in the church a while, you have too, that someone has been asked to step down from leadership as a pastor because one of their kiddos has hung a hard left and made poor life decisions. And so suddenly that very child who resented the church taking their dad away from them so much because of the time, effort, and energy that goes into leading a church, now what happens is they resent the church even more because my dad lost his job because of me. Do you see that? So it's not saying we're going to put the pastor's children under a microscope and we're going to look for every opportunity to then give him the boot. No, it's just generally speaking, does live the way that he preaches, all knowing that kids are given something that we really are not thrilled about. Do you know what it is? What'd you say, Brian? Free will. I hate it too. I'm glad to have my free will, but they shouldn't have it. They're not old enough. But no. By the way, this is not me getting on my soapbox. My 3 kids walk with Jesus today. That could change, but they walk with Jesus, and they married believers who walk with Jesus. I am the right one to preach this because you can tell I have no axe to grind. But I know pastors whose kiddos have hung some serious lefts, and I know their lives, and their lives they're not perfect, but it doesn't call for perfection. They live submissive lives to Jesus. PK's not easy. Yes, it has its perks, but let's not do that to kids. So what matters? Well, it's the list I saw: faithfulness, integrity, ongoing relationship and engagement with his family, ongoing engagement with the relationships in the church. The bottom line is before you can lead others, you must lead yourself and your family. Our homes reveal what we really believe. What's the application here? Is Christ visible in how we lead and how we love? It's not perfect, but it's got to be consistent. Number 3, Paul's non-negotiable regarding leaders in the church. Number 3, the wise keep growing low. A.W. Tozer said, humility is the only soil in which the seed of God's power can grow. C.S. Lewis, some of you know C.S. Lewis very well. You might appreciate what he said. In fact, you probably have heard it somewhere along the line. He wrote these words, humility is not thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less. Some people naturally, when in conversation, cannot help themselves but to ask questions about the other person. And I find myself sometimes when I'm with there's a mentor's kind of a strong word, but he's definitely a coach of mine. He's been doing this a lot longer. And I'll sit with him and I'll get done after an hour in his office over coffee and I'll realize I never asked one question about his life. It's happened to me. And I get it. Sometimes there's appointments and it's regarding a certain issue or crisis and I get that. But my mind has to go to places other than me sometimes. So do you. It doesn't work with other professions. Imagine sitting in your dental office and he gets all done and then you go, hold on, before I leave, and you take that light. Some of you need to go to the dentist more often. And you turn it and you say to the guy, the dentist, Doc, open your mouth. Let's take a peek. And he's like, wait, what? There's a time and place. I get it. But a overseer, an elder, a pastor, and deacon, in their DNA, they care as much about what's going on in the other person's life, even if they're not a deacon or an overseer. Enough of that one. Number 4, Paul's non-negotiable regarding leaders in the church. They are called to serve, not to shine. I like this. You know what I love about our worship team? Mark, I know this is valuable to you. You've been doing this a long time. This team doesn't want spotlights. They just happen to be up front because they lead us. And when we're called to serve, sometimes we're called to specifically to not shine. Where do we get that? Verse 8. Deacons likewise must be dignified, not double-tongued, not addicted to the church, too much wine, or not greedy or for dishonest gain. Verse 9, they must hold the mystery of the faith with a clear conscience. And let them also be tested first, and let them first serve as deacons if they prove themselves blameless. First, we'll skip down to 13 now, same area. It says, and for those who serve well as deacons gain a good standing for themselves and also great confidence in the faith in Christ Jesus. So the list for deacon is really similar to the elder overseer. You got dignified, not double-tongued, not addicted to wine, not greedy or dishonest, clear conscience, tested, blameless. And leaders in God's kingdom, it is about serving. It's not about status. Jesus said the greatest among you will be your servant. So Jesus came that he wanted to be a servant of all. And so the more we serve, the more we become more like what Paul is telling Timothy to not just do, but be. And when we build our lives like a bridge that eventually collapses, we build a bridge without integrity. We build a bridge caring about what others see from the outside. And what's interesting about pastors, they're a weird bunch. Easy. What's interesting about pastors is they tend to really like the mic and the lights. And so unless there's constant tension in a pastor's heart and mind, it is so easy to think I want more people in the room first for their money, and then the other is so I can say we have this number. I hate telling people how many. You can tell people want to know how many if they meet me. How many in your church? Sometimes I'll mess with them and I'll just say 10,000. They're like, really? I said, no. 10. Really? No. Somewhere in between. So according to Paul, what makes a pastor successful is not the size of the church or the height of the steeple or the number of vans. It's this list. The greatest among you will be your servant. Bottom line is leadership in God's kingdom is about serving. Oh, good. I've left myself 5 minutes. I have been waiting for this day for a year and a half. Are you ready? Say yes. Or no. That's fair too. Appreciate your honesty. I've been waiting for this day. In transitioning from one name to the other name, I think we're in number 7. I don't know who's counting, right? We've neglected the office of deacon. You have to have elders. You have to have a board because your 501c3 and your EIN all depend on those things. But deacons can kind of do their thing. In fact, you deacons in your DNA, if I told you to not serve, you would laugh and walk away from me. Because it's in your DNA. It's what you do. But I've been waiting for this day, and I didn't know I had that. We divvied all of these up to the 3 or 4 speakers that we have in the church, and I did not know I got this one until 2 weeks ago, and I was so glad because I can now, for the first time in a long time, because it's in the text, tell you it's time for us to have a formal group of deacons and deaconesses. Now, if you're one of those that you can't be, if you're a female and you don't feel like you can be a deacon, call yourself a deacon. Call yourself whatever you want. I don't care. But basically, you're a deacon if you look at the list. And finally, we can have a group that meets, and I would love to meet those first few months to pray. That's what deacons do. To think about how to care better, deeper, to take this foster care ministry that we're launching next month, along with AZ 127, which is a great group that I'm hoping to get 50 of you with me and Judy to go down to Desert View to this meeting, because that's another group that needs care. So I went online and I tried to think about all the things that deacons can do. And so I found several lists. The first list is this. It's broken up, I think, in 4. Mercy and care. Manage the benevolence fund and assist those that are poor. That's a deacon. Coordinate the sick, elderly, homebound. Organize meals for those in crisis or have just had babies, or oversee food pantry, clothing class. I don't know. Maybe we could do that. I don't know. Provide transportation for members who can't drive that need to get to the doctor. Coordinate prayer after services during the week, after, before. Next slide. Worship services. This is yellow because I have been praying for over a year for someone to help me coordinate small group ministry. It's the position of a deacon. It's the most thankless job in the church. How's that for trying to sell it? Prepare the elements of communion. Collect, count, and secure the offering. Serve as an usher. Maintain order and disruption of services. Happens all the time. Coordinate accessibility disabled members. Next slide. Oversee maintenance. My friend Tim, right back here in the booth, he does most of the repair around here. I'm sure he could use help. He'd just like a buddy to do that with. I know Richard helps him all the time as well. Manage the inventory of church supplies. Terry, I call her Terry Angel. She's here every week making sure our supplies are up to snuff. She's a deacon. Supervise the setup, cleanup of churchwide. For those of you who don't know where to start with trunk and treat. Come early, stay late. So we don't have to do it all. That's what a deacon does. Next slide. Administrative financial, assist in nonprofit administrative tax. Handle petty cash. We don't have any cash, that's easy. Assist in financial reporting and budget. Manage church security. Run baptism. Facilitate care ministries. Coordinate new members. Care for those in a restoration process. Is there one more? Is this the last one? That's it. I'll put this on a page somewhere. We'll put all those up there. Do you see what I'm getting at? Deacons are these people. If I told you you can't serve, you'd be disappointed. You're a deacon. And I can't tell you how many people in my life who are deacons. Grief share, celebrate recovery, looking for someone to do financial freedom for folks. Told you I've been waiting for this for over a year. Tell us who you are. I'll give you one right now. By the way, you have something like this in the chair, the back of the chair in front of you. We'd like to pray for those of you, for those that need Jesus, and you know they do. And that's what all of those on that cross represent. We pray, don't put it on there. Put it in our kiosk. We'll pray Tuesday morning, and then we'll take these. By the way, on that music stand right there next to the cross are about another 100. I need someone who's deacon-like to take, and I put a bag of pins there. Why am I doing it? That's ridiculous. In fact, who can help me put those up there after the service? Anybody? Thank you. Thank you so much. Appreciate you. Thank you, Richard, Sharon. Thank you. Put those up there. They've been prayed for, and then while you're doing it, just in your mind, just pray for those people. And that's going to be there to the end of the year. Because if you have a passion for someone to find Jesus, we share it. And 2 weeks, 3 weeks ago, I said that prayer is the greatest evangelistic tool that we have. Came out of the text. We have this time for a song. Come on up here. Yeah, Travis, thank you. They're going to lead us in a little bit here to final, and I'll come back on the closing benediction. But those of you, as I described what a deacon is, tell me, take that card, write down deacon, your name and phone number. Because if you are and if you do, you will flourish and be fulfilled in that position. Because deacons love to serve. God, thank you for this day. It's hard hitting in some ways, but it's what I'm just the messenger. And so let us be men and women who move and act and do, because that's what leaders do. In Jesus' name, amen.